They arrive early and they stay late. And this is why this week at this event is unlike anything on the PGA Tour. The Waste Management Phoenix Open is underway from Scottsdale, Arizona, and I can promise you they will be entertained, and so will we.
It's electrifying. If it's off the green by an inch, you're getting booed.
The boos are coming.
It's probably the closest thing to playing a NFL football game. You're there setting up and having to come through and hit a good golf shot.
And he's not afraid to fire at flags.
Some guys like it quiet, some guys like it loud.
Trying to get the noise level up.
Louder.
In the Valley of the Sun, they arrive before the sun even comes up. Why? Because the Coliseum is going to be rocking. And they get here literally hours before they'll actually see a live shot struck on the 16th hole. But there are players on the golf course, first round underway. And one of the headliners, Ricky Fowler, his opening hole, starting on the 10th. Very cool temperatures, which is customary here, but when the sun does rise, it's expected to be a very pleasant and warm afternoon. You can see that second shot to that 10th green, and that's a good look for somebody, not necessarily us. And you can see these folks who entered the gates well before they're going to see a live golf shot. But you know what? We're going to be here when that first shot is struck on the 16th tee, and it is a real pleasure to welcome you to the Waste Management Phoenix Open alongside the big timer Charlie Reimer. I'm Gary Williams. And Charlie, you know, a lot of people can say, well, you know, I don't know that I necessarily like this, but once a year, why not?
Well, the folks that don't like it, they can pretty much stay at home, is sort of the way I look at it. There's just so much energy here, Gary, and I'm interested to hear your observations. I know it's your first time here at this event.
Right.
You know, we're out here really early. These folks behind us, they've been out here a long time as well. We just heard them getting rowdy out there. Why are they getting rowdy? Well, the officials are just now getting out there to cut the flag, and they're on fire for that. To give you an idea of just what goes on here on Tuesday, the official attendance here, a practice round. 43,000 people for a practice round. The average attendance on the PGA Tour on Sunday throughout the whole year, 41,000. There's nothing else like this in golf.
No, there isn't. Back in 2016, they eclipsed 200,000 in a day and over 600,000 for the week. Well, what is happening now? Some tee times this morning, and we will have highlights throughout the morning. You take a look at Hideki Matsuyama alongside Ricky Fowler. You saw Ricky second into the 10th, where they started alongside Webb Simpson. They were off at 9:47 Eastern time, so they have just begun their round. Coverage begins here on Golf Channel at 3 Eastern. Meanwhile, John Rahm, who's going to get a lot of support and a lot of attention, with Xander Schauffele. Xander Schauffele, his life has changed a lot since winning the Tour Championship and Rookie of the Year with decorated groupings like this, and of course Phil Mickelson, who's had great success here. And with respect to the storylines, there are plenty. This field is loaded, Charlie. It is one of the strongest fields they have had. It appears that the winner is going to get 60 world ranking points. That is at the high end when it comes to PGA Tour events. And with that, storylines this week, we say good morning, go back to Orlando. Robert Dameron, what is your storyline this week?
First I wanted to say that, you know, we have the second biggest attended sporting event in the United States at the Waste Management Phoenix Open, behind the Indianapolis 500. But I have a morbid curiosity about how the 16th hole is going to treat J.B. Holmes after the debacle last week, the 4 minutes and 10 seconds. You know, some people defended him, some didn't. I actually was a little disappointed to see that Jay Monahan, the tour commissioner, defended him a little bit. And the reason why is you can take your time, you're entitled to, but you're not entitled to affect the other people in your group, which at 4 minutes and 10 seconds, that's what's happening. So, you know, we can all talk about it, but I'm curious what judgment the court of the 16th hole is going to pass to the two-time champ when he gets there.
I'll be watching.
I'll be watching.
Yeah, Robert, that's interesting. It will be interesting to see the reaction he gets. What do you think? And Robert pointed out he's had success here.
Yeah, they love JB. There's no doubt about that. He'll probably catch some flack over it. I definitely think that's the case. I haven't had a chance to comment on what we saw on Sunday down in San Diego, but you know, basically until the PGA Tour changes its regulations, stuff like this is going to continue to happen.
You've been saying it for years.
Yeah, I mean, the PGA Tour doesn't care what the pace of play is. They've said that. You can see it through their actions. Nothing's going to change. So we can talk about it all we want, but the fact of the matter is until the commissioner decides to change it, it's not going to change. My storyline for this week, and I think we've got an embarrassment of riches when it comes to storylines so far this season. I mean, when you look at Tiger coming back, you look at DJ, you look at Jon Rahm, you look at Rory getting off to a good start. I mean, we've got so much going on. The one thing that I think could absolutely set the game on fire is Phil Mickelson getting hot, getting on a nice run, and winning this week.
Wow.
That's the one thing that could really take us over the top. He loves Phoenix. Phoenix loves him. And I know he's going to win again. No doubt. At 47, he is going to win again.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe he hasn't won since the 2013 Open, but remember, he's played a lot of good golf in the interim. This will be a cool week for him to put it together.
It would be. There's no doubt. For me, it's another guy who is popular no matter where he plays. And it's hard to imagine, Charlie. We were talking this morning. Ricky Fowler's on the golf course. It was 2010. That was his first full season on the PGA. It's 2018.
It seems like yesterday.
It really does. And, of course, a lot was made when he laid up on the 15th hole, the par 5, before you get here to the par 3 16th. He's won 4 times. He's one of the most popular players, productive. Stats are off the charts. He has 4 wins. To me, he should have won more. And I think if he won this week, the popularity of him winning here, and he was very close in front of his family, and it broke his heart. He didn't win that playoff against Hideki Matsuyama 2 years ago. Yeah,
and we're going to get into Ricky a little bit later in the show, but it's just hard to believe when you look at how much talent he has by looking at the stats. He has no weaknesses, and you would think by this time in his career that he would have more than 4 wins, but this is a perfect stage for him. There's no doubt about it. And if he gets going, these fans behind us, they're going to get behind Ricky.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. All right, Matt Chinello, your storyline. I know you're going to take a different angle, aren't you?
Well, guys, they call it the People's Major. I missed those people at some point today. Please be sure to turn around and say hello to all my friends for me. But the storyline for me this week, you know, it's always about that finish, 15 through 18, one of the great finishes on the tour. I'm specifically looking at pin placement on the 17th hole. A drivable par 4. Tom Weiskopf has one on all of his golf courses he's designed. Sunday of last year, it was a back left pin placement in that little tongue of the green. And to me, that's the only time this golf hole really plays like a true 2-shot par 4. I don't like it on Sunday. Today, it's that back left pin placement. If they have made that switch to today, and which means it's not going to be there on Sunday, I think it's a great move. I think it allows for the momentum of this finish to happen over the course of the weekend when you have the most amount of crowd out there watching this finishing stretch. To me, this is a great switch. If today means being a back left pin placement, we don't see it there on Sunday, and if this goes to a playoff, I think that's this greatest show on grass actually only gets better.
You agree with that?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a hole that's all about offense taking on risk. When that hole is cutting that back left, you almost have to play defense there. It's really not even a birdie hole. I love the fact that we get that whole location out of the way early in the week, and Matt's right. I don't think they'll go there a second time in the week. That sets up for the next 3 days to be real exciting at 17.
Yeah, I think it's the most underrated hole on tour because it
One of my
follows
favorites.
this hole. That's one of the main reasons. All right, another storyline. We go back to Orlando, one of the best instructors in America. Travis Fulton, good morning. What's your storyline?
Hey, good morning, guys. You know, a lot of stories. I agree. I'm going to go with Charlie, though, Phil Mickelson. And I think Phil's been a story really for the last 5 or 6 years. You consider he hasn't won since 2013, so perhaps a little love there from the ASU alums will get him going. And he's made some wholesale changes since 2013. You may recall he went from Butch Harmon to Andrew Getson back in November of 2015. And there's been some changes that have developed in the swing, and I want to share with you some of those changes. And we've got Phil here back in 2008. If you come over here, we're going to go ahead and roll this a couple different times. And of course, when you look at Phil 10 years ago, you know, the long, fluid swing, of course, had a lot of distance, hit about 295 yards back in 2008. Strokes gained off the tee, he was 28th back in 2008 and 3rd strokes gained approach. So he really had the ball striking working through that stretch, 2 wins in 2008. Now you come back over here to 2018. We play this through, and to the naked eye, when you look at it, you know, again, still that long, fluid swing. You know, he's lost a little bit in club head speed, but statistically a little bit different. You go back to last year, a little bigger sample size, 119th in strokes gained off the tee this year, all the way down to 206. So the iron play still pretty good this year, but the driver has really set back a little bit, I think, from these changes. Now, let's take a little deeper dive into what some of these changes have been. We're going to go ahead and draw shaft plane here, and when you look at Phil slowly and you look at him closely this weekend, you're going to see a much different first move. Watch this over here versus 10 years ago. Let's go ahead and play it through. Watch the club head here. It's a little bit blurry. We're going to bring a red dot in to help it. That club head is a fair amount out in front of him now versus 10 years ago. Of course, Phil, the club head much lower and much more to the inside. Now, these camera angles are not ideal. It's tough to match them up from 10 years, but you get the idea of what they've done here to get the club head much more out in front of him versus the club head low and to the inside. So that's a pretty good size wholesale change. Now we're going to go ahead and let that go there. We're going to take him to the top. You know, Phil, of course, still very supple and limber, and as we take him all the way up to the top of the swing here, you can see full hip turn, maybe a little bit more range 10 years ago, the right heel coming up to the top. But as he comes back down, you know, I think this is where Phil probably gets caught a little bit in between. He's made some comments about the downswing kind of reverting a little bit to the old versus what he's trying to do. And I can only imagine as that club head, you know, a little bit more out in front of him here, the good shots that he hits are the ones where he makes that turn and then he lets that club kind of shallow out and work a little bit back underneath that versus when he's in here, you know, historically he would have to get a little bit on top of it. So the changes make sense, but the reality is statistically, and where it counts the most in the winner's circle, Gary, he hasn't been able to crack the code, and perhaps this week he can get back into that winner's circle. Back to you guys.
Very interesting stuff, Travis. More from you coming up. Charlie, before we talk about some other holes, because the focus this week is on 16, quickly, a little capsule on this golf course and why you like it.
Well, it's a golf course that's an interior golf course. I really like that. Typically, when you come play desert golf courses, you got houses right and left on every hole. This golf course is on the inside. It's an interesting golf course, and that Tom Weiskopf, along with Jay Morse, who's no longer with us, really gives the players a ton of options. There's enough room out there where you have some angles that you can deal with. So there's not just one way to get from point A to point B. You can sort of plot your way around it, and there's no single best way to do anything here. And that's one of the things that I really like seeing in a golf course.
Well, we're going to talk about some of the other holes because we're going to be here for the next 4 days. But the golf that preceded us here on Morning Drive, the Maybank Malaysian Open, and Chris Paisley really is off to a very good start when you look at not only this week, but with respect to his season. Young man from England, 7 under par, 65. He's got a one-shot lead over David Horsey. And again, you'll see that coverage. Nice to see Arjun Atwal, who has also played well here over the last 6 weeks. And I mentioned Chris Paisley. Charlie, recently, aside from that missed cut at the Australian PGA, this young man is going in the right direction.
Well, how about England going in the right direction?
Oh, my gosh.
So much good play from the English players right now. I mean, here's a player's off to a great start. He throws in a win or two. I make that Ryder Cup selection a little bit more interesting.
I know it. It's amazing the number of Union Jacks that we're seeing on leaderboards week after week. Tommy Fleetwood getting that win a couple of weeks ago. All right, time for the tee sheet. Matt Janella. You're going to handle it expertly.
Of course. Thanks, Gary. Here's what's coming up on today's show. We'll be live out on the course with Lefty, Ricky, and Rahm as they set out to win the People's Major. Plus, How did we get here? Matt Adams brings you the backstory of the greatest show on grass. And as if we need more, it's, oh, by the way, Super Bowl week. And we have a pair of our intrepid reporters bringing you some shenanigans from Minneapolis as they get ready for the big game. That and a lot more right here on Morning Drive with you until noon Eastern. And looking forward to it.